Today, on the 15th of September 2018, we're having the 1961 to 1966 senior school reunion from the Peninsula School in Mount Eliza, which has recently had its name changed to Peninsula Grammar, which we abhor.
Bob Brewster, my tutor at school, English teacher, all-round good man and gentleman. We're just all people.
Well, I was, but I've lived in Geelong since I been there. Which one? This is not police voice. One of those stories, it's called What My I know the operator there.
I'm retired as a red jack.
This is a good opportunity to get the three of you together.
Okay. Good voice. Is that AV? Audio visual. Everyone's stuck down.
John. Some of the old days. Just down for the day, it was straight down. Just a kid. I was taller than you even as a 14-year-old. But you'd sweep into the room and you were a chubby sort of fellow, then you'd sweep in with this big smile on your face, and the whole room would lift in delight, you know? And when it came time to appoint tutors, 95% of the school wanted this man to be their tutor. The workload must have been enormous. Bob
and it's to see so many familiar and some not so many familiar faces is really splendid. For those who don't know me, I'm Johnny Sally, and it's my honour and your misfortune to be your Master of Ceremonies this afternoon. A special welcome to erstwhile schoolmasters in no particular order: David Bramall,
This is Tony Williams.
Roger Ball, Bob Brewster, and Ian Guthridge. Thank you so very much indeed for coming along. especially in view of the failure rate that we have collectively offered him. Now there's a list of apologies. Bob, it's on the table. Is it anybody who wants to have a look at those who apologise, who couldn't make it? Richard came to Peninsula as a grade 4 foundation pupil in 1961. Successfully matriculating in 1970. His partner Dudley was Deputy Chairman of the Peninsula School Founding Board of Directors, so Richard is steeped in the beginnings of the history of this magnificent school of ours. He graduated from Caulfield Institute of Technology as a graphic designer in 1973 and specialises in corporate identity and communication design. His career has seen him lead some of Australia's most significant brand identity projects. Can everybody hear me? Yeah. That's good. As a specialist designer of brand identity, Richard works with his clients as they undergo corporate change. He uses the process of strategic thinking to define a company or organisation's purpose and unfold their brand history using imaginative design to create targeted connections with various audiences. I'm sorry our readings, but I can't remember it all, not at my age, obviously. Richard's association, which he co-founded, he's been visiting design professor at several of China's design universities. He was design director of the Sydney 2000 Olympic Games. That's a feather in anybody's cap. Yes, well done, Richard. He was the recipient of the Apple Computer Master Award in... Thank you, I'll do without that. In 2003, he founded the design firm Arco Brand, and in the same year was invited to be the visual identity consultant for the Melbourne 2006 Commonwealth Games. In 2004, Richard was appointed as visual design consultant to the Beijing 2000 Olympics. He's obviously got a fairly Olympic connection there. In 2007, Richard was presented with the Monash University Distinguished Alumni Award, the first designer to receive that award. And finally, in 2009, he was inducted into the Design Institute of Australia Hall of Fame. So, Richard is no slouch, it's fair to say. He has alarmingly clear memories of Davies Bay and the Peninsula School going back to the mid-60s. And I now have pleasure in inviting him to give us some insights into his life's journey. Thank you, Richard. Harry, can you turn the lights off, please? Thank you. Not mine, just his.
Thank you, Joe. And thank you for the time you're going to give me to have a bit of a talk, have a chat. I've titled the slide presentation here, The Journey, and because I really just wanted to talk a bit about my background, and whilst here we talk a little, obviously there's memories and seeing all you guys here, there's a lot of looking back. I actually prefer to look forward, and I've spent my whole career in that endeavour. Caitlin's looking after slides there. Could you, do you mind going back to the station?
Sorry.
Thanks, Dale. Okay, so I called it The Journey, and really I'm actually here. It's difficult for me to be here, quite frankly, because this is really going back into a period of time when I was a kid, and I'm really here to honour my father and my mother, who were instrumental with the start of the school. We just go flip the slides there now, Caitlin. Just so this is me, about 8 years old, 6 years old. I can still remember this shot myself when I was in my family home, and you'll see how my life has come full circle, because I have two little boys the same age as this photograph of myself. So it's a sort of a rather interesting retrospective of the journey. Next. I read in the documentation about the crest, origins of the crest. I don't know where that story came from, because it really is a fabrication, because the crest of the Peninsula Grammar School originated from my mother's family coat of arms, the Barleys, and the shield, the hand holding the axe was the start of that crest drawing. My mother was very creative, and she was very instrumental with my father of the starting of the school with John Newton, who was the first president. Next. So I went down to the school. I haven't been to the school for 40 years, and I drove down there the other day and had a look, and I took this photograph of the school crest, which is on the gates, and I can't let, you can imagine my interest and surprise at how big the school is. It's absolutely almost a multi-faceted polis. It's a city in its own right. I couldn't help but look at the shocking signage, etc., that as a designer that actually is there. But I did have some great memories of my first time of being in the primary school there at the start, and the boarding school, which used to be up on the top left, and then the woodworking shed, which I think his Christian name was John, but John Ford had further down at the bottom of the fairway, where I actually did woodworking, and I've still got a box that I made with John Ford at that time.
Bill.
Oh, Bill Ford, sorry, I apologise. Bill Ford.
John was his son.
Okay, right, well, we've got half it right. So if we just go to the next slide. And the quote there is from Hamlet, for this quote from Shakespeare, "Hold fast to good." And I actually think, looking back to it and what conversations have been around the table in the room here, that we did all hold fast to something good in our journey at that time of the school. And who could have thought that a kid like me at that age, 10 years old, starting in 1961, how our journeys would have unfolded as they have done for all of us. Next. So I like to sort of think about the journey a bit like this cap. Now, Bob sent me this cap. I don't actually know why he sent me this picture of a cap. So I thought, well, how can I make a story out of that cap that arrived? And I thought this is very much like the stitching of one's life, that the overheading threads of your journey, which you end up by actually creating a picture of your life, but they're all made up of the threads of intersections of trials and tribulations and pleasures and happiness and a lot of sadness. And in the end, we all come together in the finality of life, but it's all just a journey. And all those stitches there, each one has a different stitch that makes up the fabric of your life. And I see myself on my journey as creating the fabric of my own life. Next. So, you know, this great quote by Charles Darwin. I was just trying to say, what could I talk to you guys about tonight, because there's probably some great distances between our journeys. And it really is, you're given the opportunity to be honoured in this way. And so I thought it was really important that I actually took some time to explain to you, express to you one individual's journey, which is no better or no worse than anyone else. But I really do believe that about purpose. And I really do believe as an individual that you have to have purpose in your life. Because if you don't have purpose, you get lost. And so I've always stuck to purpose. But on the same pathway, sticking to purpose, I've also given up a lot of sacrifices into other things I could have done to follow my purpose. And I've really been really conscious of the fact that I admire people who adapt to change, because change is all about us. And I was in the Apple store this morning getting an adapter for the show today, but I didn't have the right adapter. And I recognised that I'm talking, and I've got my boy Max with me, who'll be 9 in January, and we're talking, and he's so fluid with what technology is about. And I'm a Luddite trying to understand technology. And so I really sort of see that whole change of purpose and technology as being part of my life into the future. So this says here, you know, the one that's most adaptable to change is the one that survives. And I've stuck that mantra in my whole life. That's a very deep purpose to me. And I've discovered that in terms of putting this presentation for you today. Okay, the next slide. So, one of the things when Johnny Southey contacted me, the last time I saw Johnny Southey was scrambling over the cliffs down at Davies Bay. I mean, this is where I grew up. I was very fortunate to have a fantastic life in my early years. And this beach is only 2 weeks ago I took this shot. It hasn't really changed since when I was down here as a kid, just as the landscape down here hasn't changed. And the water and the sea and the under-changing, the waves of the sea, the fact that those waves keep on rolling in forever and forever and ever, that is also a continuum of life. And it's a very strong influence in my own purpose of life. Next. So this sense of the sea, the sense of the rolling in of the tide, and the sense of the trials and tribulations you have with your life, this is something that I really, really embrace in my own life. And I really think it's important for an individual to actually understand the things that are fallible about you and actually do the learnings. So I spent a lot of time by the water. I never lived anywhere else with more than 5 minutes from the water because it's such a huge north point in my life. Next. So I just quickly journey here. Now this is not a brag session, it's just really to put it into context because a lot of you people may not know what someone like myself does. And when I actually went to graphic design, which I had no idea about what it was until I went to Caulfield Tech. When I went to Caulfield Tech, you know, you can imagine for your own children and for your own self, I suddenly found a hand that fitted the glove, and the glove was designed, and that was really my starting point. I've never ever done anything else but done that design thing, but I never knew anything about it until I went there. When I went to Caulfield Tech, my mother died when I was 15, when I was at school, and my father died when I was 19. The school gave me a year bonus, no charge for the school, and my younger brother Stephen, who was 2 years behind me, he also got that acknowledgement for the school. I'm forever grateful for the school for doing that. And from that point on, though, I was on my own. My father basically died when there was no money, and I put myself through technical school by going and working on mining sites up in northern Queensland each year to earn enough money to put myself through the college. We stayed together with my 2 or 3 brothers in rented apartment houses, and slowly I actually got my life on track. I got married for some incredibly stupid reason when I was 22. I stayed married for 14 years, but it was actually one of those journeys that I didn't know what else to do because I didn't have any mentor, I didn't have any parents or anything else to actually guide me. So I've been on my own from that point onwards. At the time, I actually thought I was released from the aspect of having to have old elderly parents. But I actually realise now how much I missed out in my career, that I didn't have a sanctuary to go to talk to actually have any reference points. So when you're doing that, when you get to my age now, I'm actually 5 or quite a few years older than my father when he died. You get to it now, you actually realise the whole lot of things that you missed out on without having parents, without having a sanctuary to go and do. Because if you're so purpose-driven like I am, there are lots of things that they fall by the way as you go forward. So here is started a quick little snapshot of some of the work. This is like the early traditional graphic design work in the old days when it was hand-drawn, used to paint these things and buy things. But then we moved quickly into the computer. So we just flick through. These are just some of the brands that I've designed and been involved with. And I don't want to brag, I'm just showing you this is a sort of what I do as a commercial operator. Slow that stuff. Sorry. Just go, yeah. So Telstra, for example, on Telstra, for example, we created the name Telstra, and we did the changeover from Telecom to Telstra. It's the biggest change in Australia's history. A massive job. At that time, just as an insight, we'd lost everything in the 1990 recession we had to have at Port Keating. Completely broke. All my partners that I was in business with were broke, and we got this job with Telstra, and it pulled us out of the mire. So, can you hear that? No, sorry, it pulled us out. There's a bit of feedback here. That's anything. It pulled us out of the mire, and we got going again. So, in terms of the private business, I was in business with 2 partners. All self-funded. You know, we've been bashed up a lot on the journey and lost everything and got everything back again. And you can only get all that done, do that if you've got purpose. Next slide. These are all graphic design. The purpose of showing this work is that behind every one of these designs is a story. And every design, the story has been worked out and through theory and strategy to create an image. And this is where creativity and imagination has made significant financial rewards for my clients. I think if I look at my client list, and we would have been, there's billions and billions of dollars worth of value in the brands that we've created over 30 or 40 years. The Sydney 2000 Olympic Games was the biggest job I've worked on. I worked on it for 7 years and I moved to Sydney. We set up an office in Sydney. We did all the work from Melbourne. We transferred everything up by digital to Sydney, and we did the big books to get the Sydney Olympics to Sydney. We did the job in Sydney, and it's still regarded as the greatest games ever of the history of the Olympics. Next. And so this little mark has had a huge, incredible value, and you know, it's the design quality and imagination and creativity that puts this, that has placed that value into that. And that's the intangible benefit of value add, which is the mind. And I'm an incredible believer that Australia is missing out on a huge huge future is in value add in terms of intelligence, not just digging, taking the sheep off the sheep's back or digging it out of the ground. It's actually about adding value through creativity and thinking. And things like this, we would work in the time that we went down, nearly went down, was that I heard on the radio with John Fain that ANZ had just gone down. ANZ was a client of ours. They owed us $800,000. And I heard that on the radio, and we had to go to the Supreme Court to get that money back. So in the process of being creative, you always have to be incredibly sharp-nosed as a business person. And these are names we created. Origin Energy, these did not exist before a designer put pen to paper. That sign there was done about 15 years ago. It's still an iconic sign on the streetscapes of the city near these dealerships. AFL, Go D's.
Yes.
I've been a D supporter all my life since a bloke up the road put myself down for membership from when we lived down in Watts Parade, Mount Eliza, and he put my name down when I was about 8 years old. And I've been a member for a long time. I've also been a D supporter, and I've designed the Melbourne Footy Club identity a couple of times, and also designed the AFL logo. And that's obviously iconic in the sporting area. Navy.
Go Navy.
BHP Billiton, we created the change from BHP to BHP Billiton. Cricket. Worked on the 2006 Olympic Games, and just to give you an idea, there's not all glamorous. I was actually, we'd sold our business to an international group, and I went into a business meeting for the next financial year. I'd won the Commonwealth Games from the new group that I was working with, and I got terminated on slide 16 of a PowerPoint slide for this company we'd sold to, and I didn't even know that I was actually going to be terminated. So it's a really interesting thing to look at. And I think that's where you talk about purpose, enough strength and conviction in myself, and to say that, everyone has whatever they need within them. You don't need outside things. It's within yourself to be able to actually do your journey. Anyone that has stimulants and things outside that have these things they think they need, they don't need them. It's all within ourselves. And so to walk out of that meeting having been terminated, and then I walked out and I started again 2 months later in my own business called Arco, that's what I think that you actually need to have in terms of your conviction in yourself, because if you don't do that, what else are you going to do? You'll just fall by the wayside, and I'm not prepared to let that happen to myself. So things like changing things like this, retail, food works, they're common marketplace things out there. Tennis Australia, when you look at that, for example, that's the game of tennis illustrated. Serve, return, lobby, and you've got an A inside it. They're very simple, but the designer brings that creativity to life like that. I created the name for Australian Super. It's the biggest private enterprise business in Australia. MCG, been out in the Hello Turf. It's one of my iconic brands to work with these guys. Golf. I'm not even a sportsman, but I've seen it done all this work. Convention Centre. Chadstone, we do all the work for Chadstone in terms of the signage and wayfinding. AusNet's the biggest industrial energy provider in Victoria. Queen Victoria Market's just been launched a couple of years back. It's a very contentious brand. And this one, which we're working on right at the moment, Game On Down Under. Now here's a classic example of clever thinking, forget the design. This actually was we created this identity out of the conversation between Kylie Minogue and Prince Harry. And he was saying, I'm coming down under, and Kylie said, it's game on, Harry. And so we took that together, put it together as a mark, used a cliche of the down under, which is the Ken Dome. So he created this idea of the scribble and put it together as a mark. I said to the CEO, do you understand, Patrick Kidd, I said, do you understand anything of what we created for you, how it went from his office to his management and his board onto Kensington Palace, because it's so simple, but made it so easy for him to sell it in, and it's become embraced all over the place, and the games are happening in October in Sydney, and our will be there at the same time. So that's the sort of snapshot. There's plenty of other things I've done, but I didn't want to bore you. One of the things that's been a great privilege on the journey is to meet some fantastic people who have also helped me, and I've admired. The greatest person I've met in a physical sense is Muhammad Ali. I've shaken Muhammad Ali's hand. I can still feel his hand over my hand, like a huge, soft, warm boxing glove. I almost feel like it's into the night sky when I feel about what I felt with him. He presented me with the Apple Award in Sydney at the Games. And I wanted to also sort of say that in those eyes, Muhammad Ali is a huge dimension of a man, not only a fighter, but a man as an individual. And I admire that sort of thing in people. And I try and associate with people with that sort of capacity of thinking, and also that depth, and also the ability to express themselves as they really are. I love people who are really honest with themselves and also can express that. And I love people who also demonstrate their fallibility, because at the end of the day, we're just mere mortals. Next slide. So this slide is my conclusion, and I put this slide up because this is that beach shot I showed first was up near Black Rock. This is the same water, and you can see there the intensity of the sky, and you can see the leadiness of the sea, and you can see that bright light ahead of you, which is about our futures. It's about possibility, it's about creativity. And I'm really quite emotional to be standing here, because I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for my father and my mother, who had a vision too. And they saw the school as being something that they would give to future generations. Of course, my father never saw the end of it. His business went down the gurgler. He died in bed, a very, very sad and disappointed man, having lost everything. But I'd like to think that as his son, I actually did my best to validate what he did for me. One of the things I said to Bob, Bob's been fantastic. I don't actually really know why I'm actually here, quite frankly, because I've done a lot of work like this, but everyone else has done some fantastic things too, so I'm grateful and humble for this. But I said to Bob, you know, I never ever remember my father ever saying he loved me. And that's an incredible thing to have. I tell my boys I love them every fucking day. Because I do love them, but I also think it's so important to express that. And so here I just wanted to say that in amongst the doom and gloom, I'm 67, and I've got 2 little boys. I work every day. I've got a full day's work to do tomorrow. I've got 8 people in my team. When I see this future, this sense of purpose, that horizon line, I love the sea because of the horizon line, because when you stand by the sea and the horizon line, there's nothing in front of it. There's no buildings, there's no people, there's nothing. There's just little boats on the water. I love that idea of the possibility of the horizon line. So that's something which draws me to my life and my future, and I spend a lot of time walking on the beach thinking about things. And finally, I just want to show you 2 special people in my life. These are my 2 little boys, Alex and Oscar. This is our beach, again, down here on the beach at Black Rock. And, you know, sometimes I think, what the hell was I thinking? You know, what the hell was I thinking? On the other hand, I think, well, this is the purpose. This is the next part of the journey. This is seeing them grow up. If I could, I'd like to see if I could do a better job on the domestic loving aspect than my own parents did for myself, because I said I missed a lot of that. And, you know, I just also want to be very grateful for being honoured in this way to be able to speak to you. You know, we're pretty open type guy. I hope I haven't indulged you too much with my conversation, but I think it is really important for us to know about that thing that's within ourselves. And, you know, we're in a very, very interesting time. There's a lot of challenges and a lot of change out there. You know, people who lose their jobs, for example, at this point in time in their 40s and 50s, they have to actually reinvent themselves, because there's actually no way else. The world is not the same as it was anymore. And so I'm part of that process. I'm reinventing myself. I work with my clients about reinventing. Every day is a new day of having to try and work out and help a client or somebody on my team to solve another problem. It's a very, very privileged place to be. I'm very grateful for what I've done. I'm grateful for the people around me. But I've also lost a lot in the process. So just thanks for listening to me. If I just share that one thought, that thing that's in ourselves, you know, it's an incredible gift to be alive. I noticed that here I just didn't realise, when I was listening, there's 20 or 25 people aren't here anymore around at school, and I can't believe it. And so just treasure the day, treasure the people you're with, and from the point of view of its imagination, creativity, treasure what's inside you, because what's inside you is a gift. Thanks very much.
A sensitive and aspirational talk. I think we're all proud to have somebody with your courage and convictions amongst our alumni. And we know how hard you did it in the early days, and you obviously still push on, but you know, you're a great credit to us all, and most of all to yourself and your family. Without thanks, Richard. Took place before this decision was made. So I'd like to ask for a show of hands from you, the Foundation student body, which of you were actually consulted concerning this change, please? Hands up. Oh dear. Well, can I ask for another show of hands, please? Can I ask for a show of hands of voters of you who approve of this change? 2, 3, 4.
We don't.
Four.
We really don't know what the difference is. You know, fine print.
Okay. Well, I'm listening to the numbers. Nobody was consulted, and 4 amongst 40 approved. Well, for reasons I can't quite explain to myself, I feel betrayed, but maybe I'm just old and don't like change.
Could be.
Having spent my life pedantically and proudly correcting people when they referred to our school as Peninsula Grammar, I now found that I've been wrong all along. I can't help feeling that if our founding fathers and Dudley Clark had felt that Peninsula Grammar was an appropriate name for this school, they would have called it that. And I can only imagine that the motivation for this change was some misguided, unambitious desire to emulate some of the other grammar schools and colleges in the APS and the AGS. Well, I'm here to tell you that the school we went to fostered and attained far loftier aspirations than most of the other grammar schools and colleges, and I should know because I went to quite a few of them. Enough said, it's done, can't be undone. Now, when Bob Arthur first asked me to introduce our second speaker, I've got to tell you it somewhat raised my eyebrow. And mine's not the reason why. So I set about researching the lifetime achievements of this particular individual, and sadly I ran into the proverbial brick wall. Well, I thought to myself, I can't play the ball, I'll play the man. So I now offer you, in the best light possible, the personal attributes of this 24-carat lunatic, a unique, eclectic, deeply flawed individual with more than enough cranial chaos to be the subject of an entire psychiatric symposium. I first met Maxwell Allen Worrell as a 6'7" beanpole. God, he's not that anymore, that's for sure. In 1967. 1966 it was, and his favourite tipple back then was a brew called Brand of Vino, which was a disgusting mixture of cheap brandy and sweet sherry. Ring any bells, Max? Max only drank this by the flagon. In fact, it was only ever sold by the flagon, those big glass things that you could... Yeah, anyway, okay. Now, Max was at the Peninsula School for 5 years, from 1962 to 1966, and I would like to quote from a 1964 school report written by Bob Brewster. Where are you, Bob? You wrote beautifully, you wrote concisely, and above all, you wrote accurately. Unfortunately, Max is still inclined to dispense his practical jokes, his lesson disturbances, and his backchat with scant regard for time and place. Naturally, this kind of behaviour aggravates his teachers and achieves nothing except that it disturbs the entire class and brings swift retribution on Max himself. And in turn, he becomes resentful of this suddenly imposed authority. Surely he must realise that this sort of behaviour is utterly pointless. Unquote. Bob, I'm here to tell you that Max did not realise it then, and he does not realise it now. Max left Peninsula having convincingly failed his leaving certificate. However, a mark of the man was that the only subject he passed was French. Well, Jim Stanhope must have been pretty amazed at that. Who couldn't even pass English? He passed French and nothing else. Oh dear me, we'll ignore that coarse remark. Now, in preparing this difficult introduction, I started jotting down various words that might describe the dubious qualities of this quixotic individual. The ink started to flow pretty freely, I don't mind telling you. I was going to cobble together a narrative around these words, but upon reflection I decided, for the sake of brevity, that I would convey to you in more or less bullet point form the complex elements making up the roguish Max Laurel. So firstly, make no mistake, the man's a maniac. He's a well-meaning maniac, if there's such a thing. He's highly intelligent, but as mentioned, he was scholastically singularly unambitious, that's for sure. Since leaving school, Max has engaged in more than 22 for Christ's sake, different occupations, and some of these have been navvy on the old Gan Line railways in remote Unadata. He's been a serial abalone poacher, a house builder, screen sets and props builder, a cobbler. And for those of you who are, yeah, you all know what a cobbler is. He's been a nightclub bouncer. In fact, I was told he was a head bouncer, but I wasn't quite sure quite how to read that. Whether he was the chief bouncer or if he bounced people's heads. You tell us, Max.
Head bouncer, not head bouncer.
Okay. He's been a boiler maker. He's an author. He's a filmmaker. We saw his film last time. He's a screen actor, most notably for his cameo appearance in the eponymous movie Mad Max. Was that ever well played? All right. And he's been a cinematic stuntman and pyrotechnician specialising in smoke and explosions. Anybody who knows Max wouldn't be the least bit surprised to hear of those. Here, in a nutshell, are some of Max's other admirable traits.
Well, there are some.
There are quite a lot, they're coming along. Max is the proud possessor of most of his own teeth. Which reminds me, back in 1967, this Sharpie, I think we used to call yellow Sharpies in those days, this little runt of the Sharpie picked a fight with Max. And Max, towering over him, said, "Right, mate, right here, mate." And this little Sharpie obliged him and removed both of Max's front teeth.
The Sharpie said, "You've been playing my brush."
Oh,
Yeah, he stirred my brush.
Yes, which means, have you been stepping out with the girl that I would like to be stepping out with?
We were looking at her over the fence. She was in the shower. We used to line up for her.
All right, enough said. Max always sailed pretty close to the wind. Max has been a fugitive. Are there any outstanding warrants for your arrest, Bill? Well, they're all extinguished. Thank God for the statute of limitations. Max is an imposter. He's an imposter. While working as a builder in Queensland with Bob Arthur, he called himself Max Long. We're trying to work out whether he was trying to dodge the taxman, the police, pregnant girls' father. Nobody goes, who knows? Anyway, Max is a philanderer, but a confirmed bachelor. There's no girl hard up enough to have. He's a monumental self-medicator. Read between the lines, okay? He's a bush doctor ministering to the needs of those who are healthier than he. He's a persistent pusher of inefficacious health supplements. He's a dabbler in the occult, diabolism, superstition, black magic and potions. He's a reprobate, a recidivist, an inventor of the madcap variety, an enthusiastic and talented amateur engineer. He's a fabricator, in both senses of the word. I recall for his 60th birthday, Max built a little boat. It was made of corrugated iron, I think what we call colour bond. And it had an outrigger on port and starboard side.
The Titanic.
It was known as the Titanic. And Max launched it into a swimming pool. That was all very well, but over the course of the next week or two, one of the outriggers started taking on water. And I don't know how Max got that vessel out of the swimming pool, but it was tough, and nobody was putting it in. How did you get it out?
It was very difficult.
Yes, all right, okay. Max is an experimenter. He's a pyromaniac. He's obsessed with firearms and other weaponry. He has a fascination for explosives, from fireworks to dynamite. Is that right? Max used to blow up letterboxes in and around Frankston and Mount Eliza. They were contained spaces, and he knew that a penny bunger, threepenny and twopenny bungers, a long 16 band, along with the loss of many fingers, Max would put a penny bunger in a well-selected letterbox, and he would go boom and blow the damn thing to pieces. One time he was a bit too close to the action for comfort, so he devised a way to get some remoteness between him and the explosion. He knew of the Tiger mosquito coils. You remember those coils? You had to light them, they smouldered to keep the mozzies away. So Max would lay the wick of a penny bunger over about a centimetre from the end of a smouldering mosquito coil, tiger mosquito coil, and then when she blew it, he was at least 150 metres away. Good on you, Mac. That's a really great.
An inch per 15.
That's right. Max is a raconteur. He's an incomparable exaggerator. He's a wildly vivid imagination with a morbid fascination for the gruesome and the macabre. He's inquisitive. He's eccentric. He's voluble. He's talking underwater with marvellous in mouth to a whole new level. Is that right, Max? He's irreligious, irrepressible, irreverent, unorthodox, iconoclastic. He's impulsive and compulsive, but at the same time he's a hopeless procrastinator. He's a wastrel. He's a freeloading master of the social security system. Max, I doubt you've ever actually paid tax. You are a flouter of municipal regulations and a driver of hideously unroadworthy motor cars. Worst of all, you are the debtor to me of a Vickers bottle of gin going back to 1967. 50 years that'll be. So, to conclude this unduly generous introduction, Max is an affable, genial, gentle giant, and undoubtedly a colourful discredit to his school. Max, stand up please, and take us for a trip down memory lane. As you know, you are under a strict time limit, and to enforce this, I have bought a little bell. I don't imagine Max will take any notice of it. He will snatch it from me if I ring it. He'll probably need his mouth swallow it and dare me to ring it. I give you Maxwell Laurel.
I don't know. I heard a story the other day about two old blokes walking down the road and having a chat, and wives walking along behind them having a chat. One bloke says to the other one, "So Max, what have you been doing, mate?" The old bloke says, "Oh, the wife and I went to these films last night. We saw this incredible, it was like a movie really. It was bloody great. It was the best story we've ever seen." He said the acting was fantastic. He said the special effects, the storyline. He said, "Mate, you've got to see it. It's the best thing we've seen in years." And I says, "Yeah, well, what's it called?" Oh, he said it was called the, oh shit, my memory's getting bad. He said, I know. What's the name of that flower? You get them in bunches and they've got a beautiful perfume and they've got all prickles all down the stem. The bloke said, "Oh, that sounds like a rose." That's it, the rose. Hey, Rose, what was the name of that movie we saw last night? Now, they say that life can be considered a sexually transmitted terminal illness with a 100% mortality rate. But they also say that no man is truly dead till none alive remember them. So, in that spirit, when I mention the name of one of us who's died, dropped off the perch, kicked the butt, or otherwise shuffled off this mortal coil, I propose that we raise a glass to them in order that in our flowing cups they be freshly remembered. Now, Bobby's going to call the roll later, But just for the record, there's a couple of people I'd like to remember. Better pace yourself, because there's a lot of us now. It's getting to that time of life. Men like the Reverend Bruce Clark, a finer man never drew a breath. Right? Jim Stanhope, a.k.a. Greasy Jim, because of the bell crane. Wonderful, brilliant man, good man, wonderful French teacher. Ken McGowan, a.k.a. Spinner, he of Team Lions Go. You remember that one? That's got feedback. And my old nemesis, the Reverend Dudley Barrington Clark himself, a.k.a. Skull. Just for a few stars to them, gentlemen. Now, back in those days, there was little or no supervision of the pupils during recess and lunchtime. You might remember that. What went out on the fairway wasn't noted. It didn't matter till the bell went. Games like British Bulldog. You ever try and get past Graham Brenner, British Bulldog? And you just knew if you were the last one that got across there, you get dumped on by 20 guys. And then they'd wait till just before the bell was going to ring, and the loser, which was usually me because I was so big, long and gangly, would get held down on an ant's nest. And when the ants got up your legs, only then were you allowed to go into class. So you'd be in class like this. Well, what do you do? Stop fidgeting. Now, Bruce Clark told us one day about David and Goliath, right? And how he slew the giant with a sling. Oh, how do they work, sir? Well, it's just a simple pouch arrangement with 2 slings, and he whirled it around, got the speed up, and threw the stone and slew the giant. Well, the next day, there's rocks flying all over the fairway. Big rocks. And this went on for a few days until Pete Robertson, he comes in with a sling on steroids. The thing's got 2 strings like that. The pouch is as big as a half a football. He puts a half brick in it. He gets a little kid to run around, and he's 30 seconds go, and a half brick went right across the fairway and crashed into this hut that we built over the creek. I mean, it was a hell of a throw. That was Pete. He always overdid things. Now, could I have a show of hands, please, for those who know the significance of the following sequence? Piston, barrel, butt, body, bipod. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Gentlemen, you're looking at the surviving members of the Peninsula School, 3rd Cadet Brigade, Peninsula B Cadet Corps. The lieutenants were Lieutenant Walding and Lieutenant Longling. Cadet Under Officers Bob Bishop, who can't be here today, and Tony Sims, who passed away some years ago. They were the CUOs. Ian White is recovering. He was a Company Sergeant Major. Roddy, you were a CS7 first, weren't you? Did you make CUO later? Rob Chatfield, you made a CUO later, didn't you? Did you really get £5 and a cheque for £5 and a letter from the Queen?
We had to go on the Q score, remember?
The old Q score, yes, a spurious allegation that one of the officers broke into the Q store and borrowed a light machine gun, but it was all right because he'd only borrowed it and it just was only for home use. Not bad, I thought. I wish I'd have thought of it. I remember being at, that's right, the takeover of the Murdoch railway station. The unit was divided into 2 groups. One went this way and one went around. My lot never got their feet wet, but the other lot went through the swamp. And Shane Prentice said later his 5-year kid who had his 303 and water up to his waist. Did anyone go through the swamp? Yeah. Did you? And then Dominic said, I thought it might have been Chatfield. There was somebody, it might have been one of the fellows who stepped into a hole and completely disappeared underwater. His head floated away on the tide. And when he came back, he had the nerve to tell him off for getting his rifle wet. It's 303. I mean, they're innocent days. You know, we got off the bus 12 this once with fully operational 303s. This #1 Mark III short magazine Lee Enfield rifle with a killing range of 2,000 yards, 12 shots a minute. And they let us take them home with the bullshit. Imagine what they do now if you did that. Anyway, we're up at Site 5, Scrub Hill, Puckapunyal. Everybody remember that winter? Yeah. And here it is, after 10 days of mud and cramp and bivouacs and all the rest of it, we had a day off. And it was a visiting day. And it was fantastic because there was going to be girls. And we hadn't seen anything beautiful in 10 days. And we had new battle dress, World War II battle dress. Check the stripes, nearly as good as an officer, but not bad. Make CSM one day. So we got this day off, and at the last minute they called it bloody medical inspection. Well, for a medical inspection, no hat, no shirt, no trousers, no undies, no socks. And you had to shuffle around with your boots undone like this in your greatcoat, and you come at the medical officer's there and you go. There you go. Next. And we wanted to look glamorous, you know, and they're beautiful. And we look like shit. And here's all the girls, mostly from Turner College, going, and we're like, looking like shit. And remember John Ford comes up, and he suffered dreadfully from the cold. This is Bill Ford's son, John. And he came and the bloke went, how long have I been like that? Because his balls are blue. And the man went, how long have I been like that? He said, since this morning. I don't know, always like that? No, this is only when I'm cold. Warm up. And off he went. So Ford's blue balls. Now, the bird, yeah. Right, now because we were a small unit, we didn't get a lot of ordnance. So the lieutenants would come back from the army stores, and we'd have maybe a half a dozen parachute flares, a dozen Aldershot grenades, some 303s that, you know, when you pulled on a string when the enemy was coming up the hill and they pulled the tripwire, they'd go off. And Ken Walbeck, genius that he was, he'd invented a way of setting off a penny bunner by tying a couple of matches to it, and the sides off a matchbox, and when you pulled the string, went, and you had a second, boy, we had fun with that. Because once something is learned, it can't be unlearned. Anyway, so parachute flap. Now these are really dangerous. You peel off the cap like this. No one's to touch them but us. The striker goes here. Be careful where you point. Bang! Boom! Straight into the tree. Down. Boom! Blow it up in our own position. I'm like, oh, that worked, you know. And then the Aldershot grenade. It was a big round cardboard ball with a sort of a short Roman candle on the top. And I peel off the top, and you go and hit the strike and say, one night we're all on the top of this hill. And coming up the hill somewhere, South Melbourne, and these guys were tough. I mean, there was a guy called Heffernan. The short magazine Lee Enfield was nearly 5 feet long, and it weighed just under 10 pounds, and he could lift it by the bayonet stop, and he could go up in the air straight like that. And we're absolute wimps compared to these South Melbourne tech guys. Anyway, they're coming up the hill, and Ken Woolley struck around like that, just waiting for something to move. I was like, there's one! He just lobs this grenade out. And it lit up a bush, and there was a bloke crouched in the bush, and the grenade landed right on his back. And you heard him say, you stupid! Boom! Like the grenade like that, and the whole thing just always had firing our rifles and everything, and blanks, and oh, it was great. You know what I'm saying? So they go and inspect this bit of whack too. So here's Private Pentman, who sent his regards. He's up north at the moment. And he had a packet of Camel cigarettes. So when he saw Worrell coming on, Sergeant Worrell, resplendent with his new stripes, he chucks the packet of Camel cigarettes, which is filled with the cigarettes, he chucks them into the field latrine. And after I'd gone, they retrieved them, tried to light them. He said they're a little soggy, but they sort of got on going. What do you reckon? Hot piss. The same Penman lit away. His boots were really wet, so he put them by the fire and went to sleep. They built up the fire in the night, and it burnt the toes of his boots, and his boots all crumpled up. Now, just as a sportsman among us, of which I wasn't very good at sport, tried to get a few runs on the board at the AGS, we were trying to get a name as a cadet corps. So when everybody else got the bloody truck home from 5 or 10 miles or whatever it was sort of a route march. That was because when you got home, you're absolutely rooted, which is, we think, that was where it came from. So we had to march back. And he's Pentman hobbling along with his crippled boots, and his feet broke out and blistered and started to bleed. So he hits a ride home on an ammo truck or something like that. And the rest of us got back very bloody bedraggled. Speaking of boots, actually, the best spit polish award for army boots goes to Roddy McKillop. You can see your face, and now Roddy, own up, mate. You really had 2 pair of boots, didn't you? You had one for parades, and another one where you crawled through the scrub and the barbed wire and the mud. Did you?
You're right.
Yeah, please. Hey?
You should have seen his old man's boots.
Yeah. See, I knew. They were just too good, mate. But all the rest of them looked at ours and went, oh God, I'm going to inspect the suit. Oh, that's never going to work.
Even in the hut, Max.
Anyway, but my finest hour of sergeant was the Anzac Day colour parade, right? I inspect the troops, and I was saying, okay, what are my orders? Well, you march the squad on, bring it to attention, the bugle will play the last post, and then rebelling. I said, what's it sound like? They said, oh, don't worry, you'll know it when you hear it. I said, could you play it for me? So no, nonsense, boy, everybody knows that, but just get on. Okay, on the day. The bugle starts up, down comes the flag like this. I'm standing there ramrod straight, proud of my detachment there, and then all of a sudden, after a while, a strange thing happened with all the people that were watching. They all started going. I thought, they're trying to track them home. I can't possibly talk to them. I'm in charge of this colour part, you know. They're all doing it. I don't know what that is. It must be a bug or something. So, but the flag's still at half mast. Didn't know that one down. Now, I was hoping Neil Carr might turn up because I always had an interest in chemistry. Ends up, who knows what happens when you mix saltpetre, charcoal, and what's the other one? Sulphur, exactly. Gunpowder. And who knows what happens when you get a full of glycerin and sprinkle Condy's crystals in it. Don't try this at home. I've never tried brake fluid and chlorine, but apparently that's on the list too. And it's just as well we didn't know about Mother of Satan. You know what Mother of Satan is? Mother of Satan is an explosive made out of acetone and hydrogen peroxide. And it goes off if you heat it, rub it, scratch it, bump it, cool it, drop it, or anything. It's just so unstable they can never use it. Nick Warner spends half his career chasing the bastards that make it. Just as well we didn't know about it, I probably wouldn't be here, you know. That's what you didn't want. Anyway, in late October 1966, crackers had gone on sale, and I went and bought a Quigsworth. So I'd been doing lots of jobs and bought a Quigsworth, and I was going to let him off. But first I had to finish my chemistry prac book. You remember the prac book about a cloth binding, and one at the start of the year, and every experiment had to be logged, and deductions made, observations done, signed off by Twiggy Taylor, God bless him, even if he's still here. Wonderful man. And you couldn't take a page out or add a page or anything like that. And so I went, Rob Redden was coming round. Rob Redden. Died in a car crash about 10 years ago.
15 minutes max.
Thank you. And I was doing my practical homework, and I had the litmus papers, the tubes, the blue and the red and everything, and I was doing it all right, and I was smoking because all the tough guys in the movies smoked, and I used to burn the evidence in this metal ashtray. And to accelerate the fire, I used to get a can of Zippo lighter fluid, just do a little squirt in that so it would burn, and then I would air the room out, and all would be well. Finish the prac book, and Rob Brennan would come around picking up later on his motorbike, and we'd drive miles and miles all over the peninsula, which is why I was always asleep in class or staring out looking at the sprinklers, you know, wondering why they sometimes went round the other way if you looked at them long enough. Did I really see that? Peninsula, no, John Robinson, no, why do they do that? Anyway, he's driving on about saying that. Anyway, I wasn't even looking, and I'm just accelerating this fire and going back to it, you know. And what happened, without really looking, I gave it another squirt, but then the strangest thing happened. What happened was that instead of the fire going there and going back to the book, as I watched, I must have knocked the nozzle on those little yellow cans with a swivel top and the cap on the lighter fluid. Because when it went squirt, it went through the flames, went and landed on the wicks of the Quigsworth of penny bungers. 21 shilling bundles, 240 of them, and they lit from the bottom up, and time stopped. And I was a big kid already outgrown the desk, and the desk was piled high with stuff anyway, and I was just trying to get out, and the first of them, because the bottom ones lift off, they blew the other ones into the air. So now I'm on the ground with this bang, bang, 240 explosions later, bouncing around. And when they finally stopped, it seemed to go on forever. The whole room was covered in burning paper. The curtains were catching fire. And we put out all the fires, put out the curtains and all the rest of it. And then I came out and look at the prep book. And I reckon a whole bundle of a dozen had landed right on the centre page, and it looked like the basement at Chernobyl. And there's nothing you could do. I mean, the scorch marks I standed off round the edge, and they were sort of furry but clean. But the middle of the book, I mean, I lost 3 or 4 pages in this black blasted hole, you know, so if you reckon you're wondering who could be so mind-bogglingly stupid as to set off 240 penny bungers in his lap, you're looking at it. Anyway, we used to have a bit of fun. I've been thrown out there.
No, you're okay, keep
Mr. Rolfe, remember Mr. Rolfe? Wonderful man, good maths teacher. Here's to Mr. Rolfe. We used to, we'd play a trick. One of the kids would sort of, oh, Mr. Rolfe, can you help me with this? And Mr. Rolfe would bend over like this. And we're behind him and get those reinforcing rings that you put on the paper, you know, where they tear out of the 2-ring vinyl, and see how many we could stick onto his black gown in the time. And he comes in one day and he goes, who's been belling the cat? And we ran through our mental list of transitions, and animal cruelty wasn't in there anyway, so we were completely innocent. And it turned out he was talking about the reinforcing things on his gown. We used to be able to get up to like 20 or 30, you know, for one good question. He needed a good stooge to create the mass bomb that he would help with, and we would go like this and not get caught. Anyway, oh no, that's right, I'm not allowed to mention these, am I? How I broke out of the boarding house with the prefect's master key. I'm not allowed to mention that, prefect, am I, Brooke?
Question, Max. 11 o'clock.
11 o'clock, a question?
I was with you.
Yeah.
At Jill Norris's house.
You were.
She was my girlfriend.
No names, no Pactville. Come on, come on.
She was
What about the finding of dynamite at an abandoned quarry? The dynamite had been stored in the creek with a long string to keep it cool. Nobody in this room, particularly in a motorised wheelchair, know anything about that one, do they? And how it set Pete Robertson on his arse when they tried to let it off. And I was negotiating to buy something because it sounded to me like a seriously good idea. And then the school rule book. Do you remember a school rule book? Anyone? There was a rule book came out. And up near the 100 was, no boy shall have in his possession any explosive substance. They wrote that for me. So I was pleased about that one. Now finally, there are allegations that certain people in this room were involved in a nighttime incident where a battery of skyrockets was fired at the Toorak College boarding house with the aim of setting off the alarms, having the building evacuated, and all the schoolgirls were going to come running out in their 90s. A 4-man team took the rockets in there off Williams Road, near the bus shelter there, opposite where Paget Adams used to live, God bless him if he's still around. And when we were just about to, they allegedly were just about to let the rockets off, and round the corner came a security patrol of schoolgirls led by a little schoolmarm. Left, right, left, girls, right, turn, like this, like this, like this. And I went, take them out. Anyway, wiser heads prevailed. So we fired the rockets, and I don't know, somebody, how long would it, Harold, you're a mathematician, how long would it take for someone to run from the bus stop, say, at Williams Road there, down to the street you lived in? Because whoever did it in sub-Olympic times. I ran over the road, I was too slow, I hit between the fence and the bushes, and I was doing all right till I what is it, Rover? Hey, I'll let you out. I shit myself, I ran down the road too. Apparently the divvy bet was called, allegedly. Anyway, that's about all I have to say. So I'll leave you with one of my 95-year-old mother, still going strong. I'm very, very lucky in that sense. She's got a new boyfriend. He's technically a toy boy because he's only 94 and a half. He's a lovely fellow, he's very kind and stuff. And she says, because she's Scottish, here's Tails, what's like his dears, and they're all dead miles of pity. Which means here's to us, who's like us, hardly any, and they're all dead miles of pity. That's all I have to say. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Max. Well, I think you're in a position to make this presentation directly and personally.
You have to say nothing more.
That's all right. I've got more to say. Carry on.
You've got more to say.
Of course I do.
Well, Maxwell, thank you for your time and effort and contribution and the alarming stories that you've told today.
Allegations.
Yes, all rumour. For your efforts today, it's a little gift from everybody here. So thank you, and
My pleasure.
may we see you again at a future reunion.
I definitely hope so. Okay?
And Jonathan, stay out of here. I'm only having one go because it's not my habit to speak publicly. But Jonathan, thank you
Well, you're
for
most
making the day interesting. I have to apologise, I think, to Bill McDonough, who wrote to me about the length of the speeches at the last reunion. I think that they were a bit too long. But, well, the Saudi timing bell doesn't seem to work. And I will hand it back to Mr. Saudi to round off so that we can get back to the serious things that we're here today for, is to reminisce and have a joyous time with our old schoolmates.
Thank you, Bill. Mr. Tedwell would like to make a presentation.
Ladies and gentlemen, why are we here? One person is responsible for this, and I think we should recognise it. So on your behalf, I would like to present a certificate of appreciation to Bob Arthur for the work that he has done on the 3 reunions that we've all attended over the years. You know that I have macular degeneration, so could I ask David Bramall to come out here and to read the citation to all of us. David, I hope you're not as bad off as I am.
Certificate of Appreciation awarded to Bob Arthur from the senior students removed to Form 6 and their teachers in the foundation years of the Peninsula School, Mount Eliza, 1961 to 66. We appreciate your tireless effort, sense of humour and positive attitude in planning and organising the successful reunions held at the Ranelagh Club, Mount Eliza, on the 8th of September 2011, the 15th of September 2016 and the 15th of September 2018. Geelong FC forever. The Mighty Cats ended up with a little motto, Quod Bonum Tenete.
It's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you, guys. Jonathan, round off, please.
Yeah, happy to round off. So, in conclusion, first of all, I'd like to thank the Ranelagh Club for looking after us so well 3 times. We won't have to pay liability insurance, Bob. We haven't trashed it once yet, so we're going to have it now. Not allowed. Secondly, again, thank you everybody who has come along. You don't need to be Max Worrell or a rocket scientist to know that the success of these gatherings depends on you being willing to come along and make them so. To each and every one of you, thank you for taking the time to join us, and especially those who've travelled interstate and indeed, I believe from England. I refuse to. Where's Bogle? Yes, Bogle is claiming that he travelled from the UK specifically and solely to join this country. I'm not sure I believe that, but if it's 1/10 true, then more credit to you, Jamie. But there are other interstaters, Max Worrell. Who Who else is interstate apart from our masters?
Ted Hook,
Yeah.
David Bramall,
Ted Hook, David Bramall,
Bob Brewster.
Bob Brewster, yeah, they're all over the place. So that shows.
Johnny Gilbert.
Alan Rossley, apparently. What mode of transport Alan took, I don't know, but it might well be extraterrestrial. But thank you for coming on, because without you, Bob and Tony's hard work, counts for nothing. I do want to reinforce our thanks and respect for Mrs. Brewster, Ball, Hock, Brown and Guthridge. God knows how many of these that you're bidden to each year. It must be painful. But we really appreciate you taking the time to spend some time with us. We really do, and thank you, all of you, former masters of ours and teachers and mentors, for taking the time to continue to look after us. And again, I organised a few of these sort of functions, so I, of all people, know how much time, work and effort it takes to gather them all together, and to Bob Arthur and Tony Austin, our sincere gratitude for the long, hard hours of work and all the telephone calls you made. It is so much appreciated. We owe this fellowship to you both. Thank you so very much.
I have a question. Are we changing the name of Topsa to...
Don't know, don't care.
Because the 80 plus. Yeah. Now tell me what's happening. I gave up my headphones when I was 13. After work, farm advisory work.
Did you smile?